I'm Nancy Saint. I'm going to talk about propagation from cuttings or vegetative propagation. We're starting well past the seed. The beautyberry bush, I have one at the corner of my property and it is very lush. And of course, this year with all the rain, it really is. And I'm thrilled. I've got all the green berries, which will turn purple later on. And my neighbor said, "Oh, Nancy, I love that bush. Oh, I'd love to have one." And I got to thinking, well, maybe I should try to make one using asexual propagation or cloning. So, what would I need and how am I going to do that? First of all, I want you to get a notebook, something you can keep track of things in, because with the propagation, these dates are going to be very valuable to you, especially next year when you say, you know, that plant just really turned out well. I wonder when I started that and what I did. So list the date you take the cuttings, what the weather was. You want to include the soil mix that you used, the first signs of a new leaf growth, the day you transplanted them, and the percentage of cuttings that rooted. And I know what we usually do is we'll take photographs, and that's fine. That's fine. After all, we have the benefit of having the date up on the top of those photos. Put them all in an album, and there will be your propagation notebook. These were the beginning of the cuttings that I did. You notice this is laid down April 1st, and there's Yopon holly and parsley hawthorn. Parsley hawthorn were from a tree I got at our plant sale, and it had a low branch, and I wanted it to be a tree. So I took off the low branch and stuck these in the soil. And this is the beautyberry that I started out. That was going to be my purpose. So all of these have been stuck since the beginning of April. So if you're thinking about doing this, you kind of want to think, okay, on what scale am I going to do? Am I going to do just 5 or 6 little stem cuttings, or am I going to do a whole tray of stem cuttings? Because you want to find somewhere with dapple shade, somewhere in your yard, outside. Warm temperatures, we don't have to worry about that in Houston, do we? Air circulation, either by fan or by wind. And you want to be able to mist or fog your cuttings continually, 2 or 3 times a day. Think about that. Is a place near your hose? Or how am I going to continue to mist my plants? So the size of your operation is going to determine whether you can do it by yourself. Well, I could go out there morning, lunchtime, afternoon, and evening, and that would be fine. Of course, that all works fine unless you break your leg like I did, and then the watering kind of slows down a bit. But I have some marvelous friends that picked up on that. Taking cuttings, there are 3 different kinds of cuttings from shrubs. And there are the softwood cuttings. These are taken in late spring. And you'll notice on your shrubs that new growth that they put out, which are just real tender. That's your softwood. You want to kind of let it harden up a little bit before you take it for a cutting. Then in warm midsummer, semi-hardwood. These cuttings I just took July 8th, so they would be more like the semi-hardwood. And then towards the end of the summer, you can take hardwood cuttings. And each of these are going to take a little longer time. So the hardwood cuttings, you could take from June to October, or even over the winter, and they're going to take longer than those softwood cuttings that you can have. So any plant you have in your yard, any shrub, you can take cuttings 3 times a year. Maybe you take some softwood cuttings and something happens and none of them are any good. Well, try some semi-hardwood cuttings. Again, kind of like Martha says, there's no one way to do it. We try a lot of different ways. All right, what tools am I going to need? I'm going to need sharp, clean knife or pruning shears. And the bypass pruning shears is the better one to use. And if you wonder what's a bypass pruning shears, well, the other kind is the anvil pruning shears. And in that one, the shears comes into a solid base, and that tends to mash the stems when you cut it. So you want the bypass, that the blade goes past the solid part. Also, when you're sharpening your pruning shears, which you should do, you only want to sharpen the outside of the bypass blade. You can kind of run it over the inside so there's no burrs there, but it's only sharpened on the outside. Then you're also going to need a bucket of water or plastic bag, because all your cuttings that you're going to take have moisture in them, and you don't want to lose that moisture. Now, I want you to be aware of the node on the branches. And the node is where the leaves come off. And it can be opposite leaf pattern. 2 leaves would probably come off the same node and go the opposite way. Whereas if it's an alternate, there's 1 leaf and then 1 leaf and then 1 leaf. But each of those is a node. And off of those nodes, roots can grow. So here you notice in the Turk's cap that the leaves have come off the node there. When you're cutting and you're looking at a branch, you want to cut just below a node, preferably at a 45-degree angle. And that tells you that's the bottom of the cutting. Because if you plant them upside down, they don't grow very well. The angle will be at the bottom. Then you want to count. The second node would, both the first and the second would be under the soil or the mixture, and then 2 nodes above, and then probably a top node, a 5th node, where there would be leaves. And you want very little of the leaf structure. You're going to cut off any extra, because these little cuttings don't have any roots. So the only thing that keeps them growing is the moisture they get on the leaf. So you don't want that extra leaf up there, or they're going to lose some of their moisture through that extra leaf. And you're going to strip off those bottom leaves when you get your cutting before you're ready to put it into a medium. You can score the bottom or take off some of the, would be the outside bark, and that reveals the cambium layer, which is where the roots are going to come from. Again, like Martha, my medium that I use, and this would be a soilless medium. They don't need soil at this point because there's no roots down there. Be 1/3 perlite, 1/3 vermiculite, and then in a minute you'll see the final third. But in the vermiculite, if you have a choice, use the larger granules. This professional grade has very fine granules that I didn't like very well. The final third, I use condensed core. It's from coconuts. It holds moisture and yet releases the moisture slowly. And that little brick up at the top in the picture is about 3 inches by 6 or 7 inches by maybe 2 inches deep. And you put that in a Tupperware tub and add water, and you're going to have a whole tub full of the product, the core. And so you're going to mix that a third in with your vermiculite and your perlite. And you want to water that medium after you put it in the tray or whatever. You want holes in the bottom of your containers, whatever they are. Sometimes you want to add the rooting powder because you know that it's a difficult plant. If you have no experience, go ahead and either try it or say, well, I won't, I'll try it without this year and maybe next year. And the other on the left is a liquid that Martha uses that has to be put, a small amount is mixed in with water. All right, I said it had to be misted. This is a misting or a fogging nozzle I was able to get, and that was online. But then I discovered later that my own hose nozzle had a mist option, and it was just as fine as these fogging nozzles. So it has to be very fine droplets. And these are on the internet, Google kind of thing. And also that core, it was on the internet too. Kind of keep an eye out for the organic core, just to have, another point on your side. All right, you want to hold the moisture into the plant. And this is a similar, well, in fact, Martha let me have this one of hers that keeps the moisture in there. This bottom one, you look at that and recognize that, well, it's a Tupperware tub upside down. And this is where the beautyberry bush cuttings were living. I had drilled the hole in the end so I could put the nozzle there and spray them 2, 3, 4 times a day. Sometimes in the back, I use this 1-gallon sprayer because I have no running water in the back. So this would work very well, although it's not the fine mist in the nozzle that the others have. You can just put them in a clay pot. Put the soil in there or the product, put your cuttings in there, slip it into a large plastic bag. And you note that that's the 2.5 gallon. They're not easy to find. I don't remember where I got them, but the whole pot will fit in there. And then you can slide that zipper closed to hold the moisture in there. If it's got too much moisture, you think, and you want to give them a little air that day, you open it up and then slide it closed. It's a lot easier than doing it the opposite way. And here were my cuttings. This was April 14th. These are the Yopon holly, and I wanted to try these because they're female. You remember with the hollies, the female have the berries. And this was May 29th, after they had been neglected for quite a while without water. They didn't do so well. I may try them maybe in the fall with a hardwood cutting. But the parsley hawthorn didn't seem to miss a beat. They're still doing fine. And here's the beautyberry bush, which I was so thrilled with. They did well. I lost a few, but of these that I have now, you say, how do you know when they're going to when they have roots? Well, you see the little new leaves that are growing there, that tells you they've got new roots. So then you want to transplant them into a pot with, say, half soil and half the medium like we used for them previously. This is another way. I'll do it just quickly. Layering. Frog fruit. I got this on March 9th in my garden, and each node had leaves and even a couple of roots coming down. So I planted them in that seed box and anchored them down with, those are little hairpins. But look at the plant at the top on the left, how healthy it looks. And then that's the same plant on the right. Look at the roots that it has grown. That was March 21st. And so here they've each gone into their own little square. So that would be a month from the day I cut it from my garden and put them in. So frog fruit is a real good one to practice on. This is an excellent book, and you notice it says How to Grow Native Plants in Texas and the Southwest by Jill Noakes, and she's up in Austin. She is an excellent resource because it's important. If they say, take your cuttings in May before they bloom, well, ours here may be blooming in beginning of April. If you can find local Texas information, it's most helpful. Thank you.